making money is great. Like not having to worry about your rent is awesome. And that's a component of it. But ultimately, anything I think will grow stale, except for continuing to grow and continuing to find new challenges and new ways to stretch yourself and push yourself forward. And so like what I find is that the most interesting part of any job, of any project you take on is when you're learning how to do it. And you go from having no knowledge and not understanding something to through the fire to actually understanding it.
Hi, guys. My name is Andy McDermott. Welcome back to another episode of Digital Domination for Lawyers podcast. I'm your host, Andy McDermott, and I'm so excited to have my very special guest today, Aaron Brogan from Brogan Law. What he does is blockchain and cryptocurrency law.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, here, let me give my whole spiel. All right, I'm Aaron Brogan.
Let's start over.
Aaron Brogan, Brogan Law PLLC, based in Bushwick, Brooklyn. I was previously a lawyer in Manhattan in the city at Big Law. I was at Weil, Gotshal, and Manjus. I was at McDermott, Weil, and Emery. I left earlier this year. I started this small firm, Brogan Law. We do cryptocurrency and blockchain law. I represent small firms trying to build products, small firms interacting with regulators, large firms interacting with regulators, individuals who have had bad interactions with small or large firms, and pretty much anything else that could come in the crypto space. I do. This was exactly what I did in Big Law. So I just kind of took my practice, shrunk it down, and target, people who have very complex problems but don't have access to, the lawyers who are in the tall buildings in Manhattan. And basically, I'm trying to bring that to them, and that's what I do.
Love that. That was a beautiful pitch. Nice 90-second tight pitch. Love it.
Every time I'm in an elevator, I do it.
That's why they call it the elevator, isn't it? I have this bell today, so that just could be me ringing it here and there. Oh, that was a good point. So, Aaron, tell us, how did you get started? What school did you go to? Give us, slow down. Let's start again. In a world where Aaron went to school.
Yeah, so I'm from Maine originally. I grew up outside of Portland in a town called Cape Elizabeth. Went to high school in Portland and really had like a very idyllic and in some ways sheltered life. I really didn't get out of Maine very often. I wasn't particularly worldly, and I didn't know anything about the world of finance or law or anything. And I got very lucky and got into the University of Chicago, which is a great school for college. And so I went there and really didn't know up from down, honestly. But I did know that I was very interested in government, public policy, that kind of thing, how the wheels of power were turned in American society. And that was basically what I studied there. I thought I was going to be a technocrat or work in government, be a politician in Maine, something like that. That was really all I envisioned because I didn't come from a world where, these economies that exist in the city, like consulting or finance, a hedge fund, I didn't know what any of that stuff was. So the things I had seen were like politicians on TV. That was the high status job that I aspired to. So after I finished school, I decided to go to law school. I was like, that makes sense. That's what everybody that I see, they're a lawyer. So I'll go to law school. I first took a year off. I worked in Chicago. I was in the government doing budget policy. Chicago government is a very interesting space. So we can talk about it another time. Maybe it's a little orthogonal here, but Chicago government's a different world. But after a year that I went to law school, I was again extremely lucky. I got into Harvard, and that's where I sort of began my adult professional life. I had a job before then, but I think, you're 22 working in government in Chicago. It's not the same as them being a lawyer at a very serious law school and then going into big law. So yeah, I was at Harvard for 3 years. That's how long you're in law school, as you all know. And there I kind of did a lot of technology law. I also did a lot of public policy. I still had this idea that I was going to go back into government. I worked with Democratic issues a lot. I campaigned for Hillary Clinton. I would take groups of people and rent a bus and take them to Maine, and we'd knock on doors in the second district for 6 hours, and then we get pizza. It didn't work. It didn't work. Hillary didn't win the second district, But yeah, that was the kind of thing that I did then. That was still the kind of person I was. I thought I saw myself as a political person.
Wow.
But after a couple of years in law school, you have an opportunity to go work for a firm. So after your first year, you can apply. You go work in big law. I didn't know anything about big law. I didn't have any interest in big law, but they came to my campus and they were like, "Hey, do you want a job? We'll pay you $60,000 or whatever to work for a summer." And I was like, "Well, the most money I ever made was working for the government of Chicago. I made $28,000 in a year, so." That sounds pretty nice. I think I could do that for a summer. That's what brought me to New York. That's what brought me to Weil, Gotshal. And I showed up really not, again, still not knowing anything about the world I was about to go into. So I did that. I showed up at Weil and they asked me what kind of practice I wanted to do. And I was like, well, I guess I'll be a litigator because I still thought I was going to go back to Maine. And my thinking was like, okay, if I do corporate law, there aren't like big banks doing mergers in Maine. Maybe there are, but not very many. Like that's going to be a practice that's really hard to bring to make mobile. But people do litigation everywhere. So if I learn this in big law, I can bring it back to Maine. I started doing it. I did really very compelling stuff. A lot of people will tell you that big law can be boring or you're just going to be on a doc review, but that was not the case for me at all. Like I was immediately doing trials for large companies, Johnson and Johnson, ExxonMobil, really complex issues, really interesting stuff, going into court. And I honestly had a great time through a lot of it. I thought it was really interesting. But after a couple of years of doing that kind of stuff, I realized I think I'm probably not going to go back to Maine. I'm probably, I think this is something that a lot of people who are from small states can relate to, which is that you leave, you're young, you always have this idea that you're going to be able to go home and someday you're going to go back and buy a house and have a family and be a leader in the community you came from. But once you get a little bit older and you realize like the opportunities that are actually there, like I was looking at legal jobs in Maine and I was getting paid whatever big law salary at the time, like a good amount of money in the city, and they would have paid me $80,000 or $100,000. And it is really hard to stare down the barrel of it's like a 30%, like making 30% of your salary or less, right? And somewhere that the cost of living is still relatively high. And it's really hard, when you're young and you're not married yet and you're still trying to start a family. Luckily, now I'm getting a little bit closer, but at the time I was still young and it's really hard to imagine going somewhere where there's just so many fewer young people. So I realized that I probably wasn't going to move back to Maine like right then. So I was like, okay, well, now I got to make it in the city. Now, like I'm here, like I have this job, but is this really the job? If I'm going to be here, like, is this the job that's going to make it in the city? So I had been there for a couple of years. I was thinking about this. And the problem with big law litigation, from my perspective, was if you're a big law lawyer, there's, I don't know, 20 partners at the firm who do litigation, maybe less. And of those 20 partners, at least at the firms that I was at, some of them are bringing in the majority of the business. Like a small percentage of partners are bringing in a large percentage of the business. And for me, when I looked at that, there's 120, 200 associates in the group and just this small little sliver of partners who are really killing it. And that math seemed really bad to me. I didn't want to be in a head-to-head competition with all of my peers who were all super hardworking, super smart. It wasn't that I thought I could win that competition, but it was just like, work smarter, not harder. You know what I mean? Like, if you see 100 peers around you doing exactly the same thing as you, and you're going to have to beat every one of them to be at the top, maybe there's another competition that's better for you, was my thinking. So around 2021, I got really lucky. And this guy, Jay Minga, that I worked with at Weil, was like, hey, do you want to write an article with me? And I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. Like, I'm trying to figure out a way to expand my career a little bit. I'll do whatever. He's like, okay, I want to write about crypto. Crypto insurance is this new product. Crypto insurance still, and we can talk about it later, probably not, but like it still hasn't really taken off in the US. But it was this idea of a new product where you have like kind of an automatic pool of assets, and if anything happens to your crypto product, which happens all the time because crypto is just like fundamentally risky, especially in 2021, if anything happens, then you'll automatically be paid out, or maybe not automatically, but there's a group of people who will vote for you to be paid out.
Oh, that's cool. That's a nice win instead of just always
Exactly.
you.
It's a great idea for a product. Totally illegal in the United States, but great idea for a product. Well, it depends on the state. Maybe in Vermont you could do it. It depends on the state. In the UK, this is an aside, but in the UK it's a little bit more permissible. But the US has pretty strict insurance laws. It's been regulated very tightly at the state level. But anyway, I was writing this article with Jay Menga, and I was like, wow, this is way better than what I'm doing. Like, crypto is like, this is way more interesting than these trials that just happen at a constant rate. Like, this industry is going to grow, and there's however many lawyers now, but there's going to have to be way more. So instead of being at the bottom of a pyramid, I'm like, I can be in the corner of a square. I don't know what the geometry. I don't know what the geometry is, but I can be kind of in parity with other lawyers. And
You could be the first. You could be the first of this new industry.
Exactly, not the first, but like early.
Early, really out there.
And so I wrote these article, and there was some interest at Weil. I started doing presentations for senior partners because I think some people recognize like this is going to be a thing, and they didn't know what it was. So they would bring me into a conference room, and I'd put a deck up, and I'd be like, "Here's what the blockchain is. Here's what DeFi is. Here's whatever," and just try to teach them how crypto worked. So that went on for a little while, but really there wasn't that much crypto work at the time at Weil. You know, maybe there was some in some corners, but in the group I was in, I wasn't seeing it. So I was like, well, this is really valuable. I want to make this a career. I'm going to go look for another firm to be able to do this. And I did for like a long time. I interviewed for firms looking for a job that was crypto only. And I got a few offers from other firms that at the time had like some crypto work. They were like, okay, we'll do a little bit. But they wouldn't tell me that I was going to be able to do that exclusively. They're like, you're going to be a securities lawyer, but maybe we'll have a little bit of casework. I was like, okay, like maybe that is a good choice for me, but I want to keep looking and see if I can get something exclusive. So after doing that it was really a long time. It was like 4 months before I found the job that I was going to go to. I interviewed with this firm, McDermott, Will, and Emery, which is a great firm. I honestly didn't know anything about it. And I just met this guy there, Joe Evans, who was a very young partner at the firm, who he just made, McDermott has 2 tiered partners. They got a non-equity partner, an equity partner. He had just made non-equity partner. So he was the most junior partner at the law firm. And he was like, I'm trying to hire one person. And I was like, okay, let me be the one person. So I went, I was the first hire into that group. And the pitch was like, we're going to do nothing but crypto. We're going to do like crypto exclusive, blockchain exclusive. We're going to serve this industry. And the idea is like people in this industry will appreciate that. Like they're used to lawyers who don't understand their problems. And for everything else, like we're going to understand their problems because this is all we do. And I saw that when I interviewed, I saw that as a huge risk because I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. But I ended up taking that job after consulting lots of people. I was like, well, you know, it's risky, but you got to make hay when the sun shines. And this is my chance to do something different. So that's the next step. I went to McDermott. So I was at McDermott for several years. I did crypto exclusive. When I started, I was doing like really small projects. Like people didn't even have VC funding. People have like raised money from their community, like companies that are
this
kind of like,
world is so new in every capacity. It's like,
yeah,
there's the rules are being written in real time. You're talking about it and adjusting on the fly, and it's right. Like every part
100%. Yeah. It's like the firms that I'm working with are not, you know, if you go to a VC incubator or if you see like a group of VC backed startups, right? A lot of those people are going to be from traditional institutions that were kingmakers, right? Like the people who would have gone to banks in 1980 and been in like a Michael Lewis book are now still doing that sometimes, but like also going to be in Palo Alto or be in an incubator in New York or something. And that's the startup world that you see. But at the time in 2021 in crypto, it was like a totally different group of people. It wasn't people who had been on that track. Like it was people who came from all walks of life. We represented firefighters. We represented all kinds of people, right? And so that's what I was doing at the start. And we got really lucky again. And that group grew really rapidly. And the biggest point in our growth was we pitched to represent the creditors committee of Voyager. Voyager was a cryptocurrency exchange that went bankrupt in 2022. And we pitched and won to represent their creditors committee. So their creditors were a class of 1 million+ people, like 1,000,003 people or something, who had lost billions of dollars when this exchange went bankrupt. And so we pitched, me and Joe, basically just us. I mean, there's other lawyers at McDermott, but we were representing our section of the group. There's like bankruptcy lawyers too, Darren Osman, Greg Steinman, lots of people. But our group went and pitched to be the lawyers for the creditors committee of Voyager. And that was the moment, like we got it. And that was the moment we really made it. Like all of a sudden, we went from being in like small rooms to we were in conference rooms at Kirkland and Ellis, deposing like chief financial officer of a public company and doing deals to try to sell this exchange to like FTX and Binance and all these massive players in the industry. All of a sudden, we were a part of it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was like a giant opportunity for me. Totally transformed my career to go from being in like these small rooms to bigger rooms. And from that, our practice really grew where we got tons of regulatory work, like lots of other firms that were still going concerns that weren't bankruptcies came to us and were like, can you help us? Like, you've seen how this goes wrong. Can you help us structure these products? Can you help us diligence this counterparty that we're thinking about working with? All this stuff kind of came in, and we had the opportunity to do, I think, some of the highest level work in the industry, really complex, interesting stuff. So I did that for years until earlier this year, January, when I felt like, for me, you know, I think I told you this at the beginning, like I never saw being a big law partner as my goal. Like I wanted to be in government in Maine. And so I think the things you need to do that, like the amount of work, the amount of internal politics that you need to do just to achieve this goal, was more than I wanted to give for something that I didn't fundamentally want. And what I did really want was something of my own. So I left and I started this small firm, Brogan Law, earlier this year. I left in January. I started doing work in March. Brogan Law officially formed in June. And we've really been marketing since then and trying to grow. And it's been kind of a whirlwind, but it's been a great success. And here's basically like my pitch of what we do is like the clients that I took at the beginning, like small companies, Series A, seed stage, people who are bootstrapping their companies, people who really like their legal spend is putting their whole business on the line because you have $1 million to make it for a year. And if you spend $100,000 on legal, all of a sudden you're making it 11 months instead of 12. And that could be the difference between succeeding and dying. Those companies need highly sophisticated, complex legal work, but it is a bet the company choice to go into big law and spend $2,000 an hour to get it. And what I can do now on my own, because I take all the money that I earn, it's just pure profit for me, I can charge a lot less than I could in big law. And I can bring in these clients and give them the service that big law was giving them for a price that is like accessible. And I've been able, you know, using that pitch, basically exactly that, I've been able to compete against big law firms. I've pitched against big law firms and won business by just having a lower price point. I've taken existing clients from big law firms because they were disgruntled because they got bills for $100,000 they weren't expecting. And basically on that pitch, I've been able to grow the firm really, really well. It's been a very exciting time. We just got ranked by Chambers and Partners Spotlight as one of the best small fintech firms in New York. There's only 4 firms ranked. And one of them is Ryan Miller, who just went to Big Law again. So there's only 3 firms ranked now.
Wow.
And we're one of them. You know, in the first 6 months, we've become one of the, yeah, thank you.
I was waiting to check the
Become one of the best small firms in the city. So that's kind of my story. That's how I got here. I know I went on for a long time, but there it is.
That's incredible. What a story. Like, You came from a small town in Maine, right? You came to the big city, but you went to Chicago. It's a big city. You started in government. Then you transferred. You did a job there, trying to work for the government. Then you transferred to Harvard, for law school, or transferred. You graduated and then went to, when you go to Harvard, like we were saying previously, before the podcast, it's like being knighted, like the network, the wealth of people that just every room that you walk in. Oh, he went to Harvard. Oh, okay. But whatever he says is right. So, you should have like a sticker on your shirt, Harvard.
Extremely lucky. Yeah, it was. I mean, going to these great schools was amazing for me. It was like life changing for me. I came from a background where my parents are very sophisticated people, but still, like being in Maine is not the same as growing up in a city or even growing up in New Jersey. And I know I meet lots of people who grew up in other places that are not considered like the central hubs of professional work in the United States. And going to these great schools and being able to go and learn and be around people was totally transformative to me because it put me in contact with a world that I could never have seen in Maine.
Yeah. Awesome. So exactly. So what an amazing like life experience you were able to have. Then you went into big law, and you found your niche with crypto, which was cool because you started with an article, right? And then took on some big cases. It's a new world, and now you have your own law firm in this new industry that's changing by the day. And you're at the forefront of it. You're already ranked, and you're crushing it, bro. You're killing it. I love it. So, this is Digital Domination for Lawyers. So some of the things we love to talk about is how do we get the word out there? What's some of the ways that work? What's some of the ways that don't work?
It's a good question. I mean, I'm constantly trying different stuff. A lot of my clients come through my network, right? So I worked in this industry before, so I knew some people. And when I left, I just called them all. I was like, hey, can we get coffee? And that's a big part of my marketing strategy is I just talk to people every day. I try to take 2 meetings every day with people I know, with people I don't know. I tell them about the law firm. I tell them what I'm doing. And it's incredible how generous people are with their time and with like referring me to other people. I take these meetings. I'm not going in being like, you need to hire me now. I'm going in like, hey, this is what I do. Like, I know what you do. Like, let me learn more about it. Let's talk. And if I ever see something I can help you with, I will. If you ever see something, then hopefully you'll send it my way. And that's a big part of my business. But
it's like old school, and it's small. Like that's the Maine in you coming back. Like the old small town manners of let's just be friends. Let's connect with each other in a human way. And
that's what I go for. That's what I try to do. And then I try like on the other end, I try to build like a digital presence that is legitimating. Like it's not the point of my digital presence in my mind is not to like provoke inbound, not to like bring people in directly, but it's that when I am introduced to somebody organically and they go search Brogan Law or Aaron Brogan or whatever, they're going to see like a line of credentials that tell them I'm the right lawyer for their work. So I write articles. I do podcasts like this. I try to sound smart.
Nice. Very smart today.
Yeah. I like anything I can do to try to create. I participated in chambers. Anything I can do to try to create that legitimacy, I think is beneficial for them the day when somebody does come in and they are curious about what I'm offering.
Nice. So it's your conversations, one-on-ones. You have your articles that you're writing online, and your articles, they are marketing, but they're also a form of branding for you. And I've heard a great adage. I love this one. Marketing is asking someone out on a date. Branding is the reason they said yes. So
Exactly right. I think that's a great analogy for it. I mean, the article, it's like, first of all, I'm really interested in this stuff. Like I write about crypto, crypto regulation, crypto law, like that kind of thing. Like that's what my work is. That's what I'm doing every day. And also, I've tied myself to this industry. I'm part of this industry now, and I really care about it succeeding. So I am fundamentally interested in the thing. So it's very easy for me to write about it. Like every week, I can sit down and have some topic, and I can crank something out really quick because I know what I think already. Like I'm not trying to dig it out. And I think that's a piece of advice that I would give to a lot of young lawyers is like find something that you're fundamentally interested in because it'll give you so much more, like so much more kindling for the fire for you to then do the things to really build a personal business and build yourself out.
Love that. That's a great piece of advice. That's awesome. As we are starting to wrap up, how can our listeners find out more about Brogan Law and you and all your stuff?
You can search my name. I have articles on CoinDesk. I've published 3 of them. I'm often quoted on issues of prediction markets, cryptocurrency, anything in that digital asset economy. So you can see things I've said there. You can go to my website, broganlaw.xyz. You can see the services. You can see a little bit on my bio. You can go to my LinkedIn, Aaron Brogan. You can email me at aaron@broganlaw.xyz. Any of these, you'll be able to find me. If you hire me as an attorney, I'll give you a hat. So it'll be a great deal for you. Yeah, all over the internet you can find me. I actually, because this is an opportunity, I wanted to plug something that's completely
Yes,
unrelated.
exactly what I was just my next question. Anything you wanted to plug with us?
Yeah, so I wanted to plug something that has nothing to do with my legal business. This is Let the Big Dog Eat by
Okay.
Aaron Brogan. This is my book published by Velo Press, which is an imprint of Simon and Schuster. It comes out November 26th. It's a book kind of about growing up in Maine, about playing golf, about learning how to play golf. I wrote it a couple of years ago while I was still in big law, and I self-published it. And then it was kind of successful self-published, and I got interest from a publisher, so I sold it to them. So then I worked with them for a year, and now it's finally coming out again, November 26th. It's available on simonandschuster.com. It's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere books are sold. So yeah, check it out. Let the Big Dog Eat by Aaron Brogan. It's a great
Wow.
book.
What's it about? What brief preview of it?
So it's basically an account. It's like half memoir and half instructional on golf. So it's an account of how I taught myself how to play golf. And the audience that I wrote it for was like my friends. So I was in the city, I was taking people out to play golf. And I noticed that a lot of people didn't really know. In the book, I call it unknown unknowns. If you know Donald Rumsfeld, that's where that comes from. But the unknown unknowns of the things that you don't know that you're supposed to be doing on the golf course, and people feel really uncomfortable because they don't know like where to start. And this book, Let the Big Dog Eat by Aaron Brogan, is supposed to teach you how to get started and how to feel comfortable out there so that you can grow and like take part and really enjoy this pastime that I really love.
Love that. Love that. Okay. Last question I'd love to ask all our guests. How do you define success? Professional, personal, spiritual? What does it look like for you?
I thought about this a lot, right? And what I want in my life is to continue for as long as possible to have novel and complex challenges, right? Like making money is great. Like not having to worry about your rent is awesome. And that's a component of it. But ultimately, anything I think will grow stale, except for continuing to grow and continuing to find new challenges and new ways to stretch yourself and push yourself forward. And so like what I find is that the most interesting part of any job, of any project you take on, is when you're learning how to do it. And you go from having no knowledge and not understanding something to through the fire to actually understanding it. And then at a certain point you reach stasis where you understand it and you can only make marginal gains anymore. And that's the point where I think what I really want in my life is to bring new challenges in and have a new opportunity to grow and to go through that experience again, because that's what I find the most rewarding. And if you look at like people that I really admire, they've gone through these many stages of life where they've succeeded at one thing, built that to be stable, and then developed a new thing and kept growing and kept growing. And I think if you do that well, you can do it your whole life.
Love that. Beautiful. So well said. Just, I love it. Closing out with digital domination for lawyers. I'd like to thank our very special guest, Aaron Brogan. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. So awesome to hear about your story, crypto and everything. My name is Andy Mizrahi. This was Digital Domination for Lawyers podcast. Stay tuned for our next one. See you soon.
Thank you for having me.